City of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded, September 1st, 2020.
I'll call the Police and Fire Commission meeting for September 1st to order. Leanne, would you please call the roll?
You're on mute.
Carlson?
I didn't hear you. If you're calling my name, I didn't hear you, but I'm here.
Carlson? Kirsten?
Yes.
Yep.
Moore? Gary Moore?
If that was me, I'm here.
Greg Wisniewski? Bob? And Weston?
Present. All right, item 2 would be the approval of the minutes. Members of the Police and Fire Commission, you have the minutes from our last meeting provided to you from Leanne. Are there any thoughts, comments, or questions as you review the minutes from our last meeting held on August the 4th? I have nothing as I look through my notes here, commissioners. And again, commissioners, if you're going to join the meeting, make sure you unmute your microphone. And when you're not speaking, I would recommend you mute your microphones like others have so that we don't pick up a lot of background noise. Are there any questions or comments or editorial revisions required for the August 4th minutes?
I move to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Carlson to approve. Second by Commissioner Kirschling. Any discussion? If not, you are voting to approve the minutes as submitted to the Police and Fire Commission. If you are in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3, the confirmation of the bills. You had the bills provided to you by Leanne this morning. Let's begin first with the fire department bills. Commissioners, you have them. Bills for that month total a little over $2,000. I have no questions on bills submitted to the commission from the fire department. Do any of you?
No.
None by me.
All right, let's then take a look at the police department bills for the same period. Chief Zenner, anything you wish to highlight for the commission in those bills for us, sir? Tom, you'll have to unmute.
Yeah, I was just going through getting some people into the meeting. So
Okay.
doing a little moderating and looking at the bills. Yes, I know there was one bill I was going to point out that we had at the police department over in excess of $3,000. I'm just had it highlighted. The Caliber press that was purchased on August 31st. Implicit bias training for SPPD employees. This was $3,397. And that was all employees of the police department were received mandatory training on that, and that was online. That was also the training that was provided to the PFC members.
Right. And have, to best of your knowledge, all members of the police department have completed the implicit bias training, Chief?
Yes, I had a conversation earlier, and that has been completed.
Good. I see Chief Cousseau was nodding his head up and down, so thank you. All right. Are there any questions on the bills from the police department from members of the Police and Fire Commission?
One question for the chief on that Johnson towing. It's this towing vehicle. Was that a squad car towed or the person they were chasing?
We did not have a squad car towed, so I'm just going through the bill. I believe we did have a charge, and that was an out of jurisdiction pursuit that we had, and that was towed on that. If that was the particular bill.
Do we get reimbursed by that party?
That is through restitution, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any questions on any of the other bills submitted to the commission for our approval this month?
I was surprised how much whistles cost. I think 4 whistles, $55, if I remember right. Just a weird thing I saw, and I thought, holy cow, the price of whistles has gone up.
There's
Gone up since your day, huh?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Is there I will move approval of the bills as submitted to the commission. Is there a second?
I will
Second.
second that.
Second by Commissioner Ostrowski. Leon, all in favor of approving the bills, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item 4 is our monthly important update on the COVID-19 update. This will be an update to the community and to the Police and Fire Commission from both our fire and police leadership teams. Chief Moody, are you with us, sir?
Yes, I'm with Chief Finn in his office.
Oh, I didn't see you back there. I'm sorry. All right. Chief Finn, would you like to kick it off, sir?
Sure. We continue to update our policies and procedures based on CDC guidelines, Portage County Health and Medical Director. We are currently working with UWSP. With all the students coming back, we've had numerous conversations with their emergency management team, and we continue to work through them. They have plans in place, and they're just letting us, and they're letting us aware of what their plans are. Chief Gemza, Gary Garski reached out to him to be part of the state or the county goes to mass testing. They're going to create a strike force team and how to do this and do the logistics. Chief Gemza was asked to be on that strike force team, and also mass getting out the vaccines for flu, and if they come up with COVID-19, the fire department, because we're all paramedics here, will be an integral thing in getting out mass immunizations for flu and COVID-19.
So pardon me for interrupting for just a second. Let me just interrupt for a second. We're going to give flu shots at the fire department, or did I understand you correctly?
We're working on where we can give the flu shots because we don't want a bunch of people walking in and out of the facility.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what we can clean, like a one-day flu shot thing, where the public can come into the building, and then when they're done using, probably where like the chief's bay and the shift commander's bay, we can decon that. Public can come in a side door, not really go in the building, and when the day's over, we can decon the whole area. We're working on a procedure on how to accomplish this goal, working with the county and using our building. Yes.
Okay. What is our timeline for that, Chief?
I'm sorry. What, sir?
What is our timeline to develop that plan? Next 30 days?
Yes,
next
we'll have
15?
it developed in the next 30 days. We're also working with the city, for city employees to come to the firehouse. We'll use the same plan.
Okay.
But other than that, it's just been, last month was the big changes for everything. Us wearing masks in the firehouse, everything else. So this month is just keeping up with the new information from CDC. Because CDC guidelines said that if you come from a hot spot, you don't have to self-quarantine for 14 days. Department of Public Health from Wisconsin says you should. And so we're working out, and we're following that, and that we are following the Wisconsin Department of Public Health.
Chief Zenner, what would you add, sir?
Well, the police department has put in the chief's report. We've continued with our process of eliminating exposure between shifts. And our investigations bureau is continuing standard protocol. We're not doing the nighttime schedule anymore. We have made purchases of cloth masks for all employees, including our crossing guards. So we're masked up, and now as college is starting, we just had a conversation earlier today how we intend to, with our Safer Point grant, use it as an educational base for the mini house parties that we will start with, and combine that with our standard protocols that we've done each year.
Okay. Now I've noticed in the Badger bounce back plan gating criteria, the last report I have is the end of August. 3 of the major gating areas in Portage County are still in the red indicator, indicating the gating criteria has not been met. including the downward trend of COVID-19 cases among healthcare workers. That is not improving. Downward trajectory of positive tests, still in the red, gating not met. So we need to, as a community, be mindful that this is a very serious pandemic and we should take it that way. All right, are there further updates from either one of our chiefs on this matter? Any questions for our chiefs from commissioners? If you have a question, Commissioner, just jump in. All right, we don't need to have any formal action. We'll thank Chief Finn and Chief Zenner. Now, with the permission of my colleagues here, I'm going to move up the agenda item update on the new bike lanes. The Director of Public Works, Scott Badoon, has been kind enough to join us. Scott, pleasure to meet you. Welcome to our commission meeting, to part of this. Gentlemen, what this grew from is Commissioner Ostrowski emailed me last week asking if we can have a report of some kind on the next agenda of the Police and Fire Commission regarding what Commissioner Ostrowski refers to as the rules of the road, the new bike lane markings in the city of Stevens Point. And with that, Bob, what would you add before we turn it over to Director Badoon and Tom Zenner if he wishes to do any?
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I've been approached by a number of people on confusion, namely how the lanes change in size, and I tried to give the best explanation I could. Also, there is a stripe lane added to the bike lane, which I believe is called a safety lane if the workers told me right. And there's a confusion on that, which is what. And then there is the confusion, and we have parking signs sitting in the area where there's bike lanes. Well, I don't believe you're allowed to park in a bike lane, but yet in my neighborhood, for instance, a number of cars are trying to do that. And so we got parking signs indicating parking, but then again, you got bike lanes, which I don't think permit. So those confusion things are happening. And then of course, you've got quite a few people concerned about bike lanes on Clark Street, extremely busy, and the sections by their underpass on my street. So there is a considerable number of people have approached me about confusion.
All right, with that, Scott, what can you do to help?
Well, thanks first for having me. I
You're
definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk about bike lanes. It has brought up a lot of questions. You know, always take an opportunity to try to explain some of these things. So hopefully the public and everyone else can understand what they're seeing or soon will see as things continue to be put down on the pavement. I think one of the first things I want to mention about what we're doing, and hopefully everyone will understand here as I even continue, and I'll try to keep this brief, but try to get into some of the details that I think are necessary, is that we're trying to retrofit these streets. So part of it we have to think of as a remodeling job to do that. And in doing so, we're finding out in the field as we're trying to put this down, not everything fits the way we originally thought it was to be. So we're making some changes on the fly. And we're trying to do our best to catch those as they happen. But that's part of the reason why right now, as Commissioner Ostrowski pointed out, we have areas with, where these bike lanes are being put down, but wherein there still are potentially, parking is allowed. And part of that is trying to figure out what it is. And it was trying to determine really the horse and the cart and which should happen first. And so we opted here in engineering to work through the issues in the field and get things down. And then we've kind of prepped a little bit, but then we're making changes to go ahead so we can get the ordinances otherwise in place there to officially designate the bike lanes, officially change the parking. So, but in the same time, we've been trying to communicate with people. I've communicated with the university, with Pacelli Catholic High School, with Schmeekley Reserve on what some of these things are happening, and to hopefully that we're getting the word out to people utilizing those as far as what these changes will be. Some of these are going to be a little bit tricky, and we're going to have to figure out the best approach to it. And I'll explain a little bit more about that first. But I guess just to step back, get a little bit about the history, so everybody understands where this even originated from, was the countywide bike and pedestrian plan was done, and this is long before I was otherwise, have even been here. I believe it was adopted in, I've got a copy here, 2014, and identified a number of improvements for bicycle and pedestrian facility improvements throughout the city as well as the county. After that was completed, it would have been the predecessor for the BPSSC now, which would have been the BPAC. Several members there had put together an application to the state to use federal funding for what is now called the TAP grant. TAP stands for Transportation Alternative Program, and it is the run through WISDOT, and it uses federal funds to do exactly what we're doing here, is to try to come up with alternate transportation approaches to utilize multimodal transportation, so pedestrian improvements, bicycle improvements, or public transit. So they utilized the recommendations from the bike and ped plan and submitted on a portion of those to see if we could get funding, which they did get. So since then, we really started this thing in late 2017, started getting into the design of what these facilities would be. And it's taken till just recently to complete that. We had several hoops to jump through related to things you wouldn't otherwise think of, but are required for federal funding, as far as historical reviews and whatnot that take time to complete. So with that, we're kind of now in the period of time to get things on the ground, and it's only going to take about another month. By the end of September, it should be done. So, 3 years of planning for 2 months of construction is kind of the way this otherwise plays out. But those facilities vary. Some of them are very simple, what's called a share-o or a shared lane marking. It's just a bike symbol with a kind of a chevron sort of arrow through it, and that's all there is. It's actually, as simple as it is, it's one of the things that does garner a lot of questions, and the reason being is that people will see them at different locations in the roadway, and people don't necessarily always know what that means. And if you see those symbols, and that would be symbols, there's no longitudinal white line there, fog line to do it. What theirs are trying to do is tell both drivers of motor vehicles as well as bicyclists, where to expect. So if you're a motor vehicle operator, where to expect to see bicyclists operating in the road, and as well, if you're a bicycle rider, where you should be riding in the road. And really the biggest difference between where they're located is related to parking availability. So in areas where there is parking, you'll see that symbol farther from the curb, because we're trying to move them away so that bicyclists aren't coming into conflict with parked vehicles that they may then want to enter into moving traffic. So we're trying to keep them, in a lateral position that keeps them out in the traffic. And then where there is no parking, you'll see that symbol much closer to the curb. And that is to just direct the bicyclists to stay to the right, as we're, traditionally, understand where bicyclists should operate, so that a motor vehicle, should it be safe, could operate around them if there, isn't oncoming traffic and sufficient, room to do so. So that's the one symbol, and those are used sporadically in different areas. And you'll even see these kind of transition between, I think, Water Street is an example that actually is going to have all three of the types of facilities on it, because the narrow areas don't want to accommodate the bike lanes. And so in some areas we wanted to keep parking and whatnot. So for a variety of reasons, you'll see all three of these. But that's the first one, and that's kind of how to understand it operates in, is just to pay attention that if you're driving a vehicle, you should expect to see bicyclists basically driving over the top. Connect the dots from symbol to symbol is where they should be operating there. And if we do that, hopefully everybody can get along there and everyone using the road together. The second one we don't have as much, but we've transitioned some of our bike lanes into what is called an urban shoulder. And ultimately, I think this is the one that's going to give everybody the biggest headache. And the reason being is because to the casual observer, it doesn't look any different than a bike lane. And the reason it necessarily doesn't is because it has that white transverse line. And it's a fog line. And the reason we use both bike lanes and urban shoulders is by design, a bike lane has to be a minimum of 4 feet wide. So you need that much space to operate a bike in to officially be designated a bike lane. However, you can operate on this urban shoulder at something less than that. And the difference that you'll otherwise see between the two and how to tell them apart is that the urban shoulder will not have that pavement marking of, say, a bicycle symbol with the arrow in it, nor will it have any signage along the side of the road that indicates bike lane. So it's really those two, if you're not paying attention, almost subtle differences that separate it, but you will see that common, longitudinal line at the curb line. And where that is, an urban shoulder, and the biggest difference there outside of that signage change is an urban shoulder, there's no statutory requirement as far as parking. So parking, unless it's otherwise, created by ordinance for that, in and of itself does not disallow parking. So you can actually park in an urban shoulder. And we've used that in several areas. There's some of it on Water Street. The probably largest amount of urban shoulder that we've put in as far as this project goes is on Jefferson. It has parking off and on, but it's not typically, as far as the street compared to some of the other ones, parked in considerably. So it seems reasonable with the traffic volumes that bicyclists can find a safe haven driving in the urban shoulder. And if they should approach a parked vehicle, there wouldn't be the traffic volumes and such that they would feel necessary, unsafe to enter into traffic to get around that vehicle on the occasion that it does happen. However, then, where there would be significant, vehicle traffic, there we'll have to evaluate some of these, and they may come up here in the future to know whether we want to eliminate the parking, because we'll have to balance out the safety of the bicyclists with, of course, parking needs. And then the last of which is the considerable part of what this infrastructure is that we're putting in now, is the actual bike lane that many people have talked about. And that, of course, is the solid white line. And then you'll see that pavement marking the bike symbol in that lane, as well as the signage on the side of the road. In a few areas, as Commissioner Ostrowski pointed out, is that safety area there, which is called a buffer. We have buffered bike lanes, which we'll see some of them are going in actually today. Maybe by the end of the day, I don't know if the bike lanes themselves will be in on West Clark Street. Otherwise, Michigan Avenue has them, North Point Avenue has them. And that pretty much is that gored out area there with the dashed, or the horizontal, or the diagonal lines, and I should say, it's just kind of an area, essentially it's a no man's land to say we want no bicyclists nor no motor vehicle to operate within here. And essentially it's just because there's not enough space to create anything else with it. There's not sufficient space for motor vehicles to operate there safely. So it's just paint on the ground to take up that space, and it gives a cushion to bicyclists operating within the bike lane. And the reason we don't extend the bike lane and make it wider in there is because it could easily be confused for just another operating lane, and traffic may then decide to take it. So purposefully, the bike lanes are kept narrower, so people should identify that I cannot operate a vehicle in there because I clearly cannot fit between the curb and that white line. I'd be straddling the line. So that's part of the just very logical, basic thought process of how they're developed within there. But to take up the extra space so we don't have vehicles, trying to operate abreast down a single lane, we just paint in that extra area there. And that area can vary depending upon the width of the road. I think Michigan Avenue is about 4 feet or 5 feet of buffer. On West Clark, because the road does change in width throughout there, the pavement width, I think there's areas of up to like 10 or 11 feet of buffer, in there, just to fill that space. And then the big part otherwise with that related to parking, since I've talked on that a little bit, here is, once they're designated as, official bike lanes, then statutorily, yes, you cannot operate a motor vehicle within them, save for specific instances where they're signed, say on the south end of Michigan, where there is actually parking and a bike lane to it. You can, of course, cross the bike lane to get to parking, and of course, leaving your parking stall to enter into traffic. But generally speaking, you cannot park or operate a vehicle within there. And all of that will be signed upon completion of what we have. So right now, yes, we're trying to get there. We're ordering our signs, making sure we have them. We're trying to make sure that everything works with the ordinances that we've created, because we have a few changes, and some of the things we're putting in as bike lane will not fit. And so we're downgrading those to urban shoulder. And so we're going to have to balance out what gets labeled properly, so we get the ordinances correct, which is why the ordinances haven't been passed, but we plan to bring those forward this month. We should be far enough along to understand how everything is going to fit. and then we'll get all that signage, put out. And then as far as just basic rules of the road and bike lanes, and I think Interim Chief Zenner can chime in here and whatnot. In the simplest of means to put it is, and just like operating on any highway, stay between the lines. Where we put these in, we've been purposefully putting in center line as well, just to try to define what that lane of travel is, so people don't try to take a wide berth around someone possibly operating in the bike lane and cross over the center line. So we've defined those center lines. And in some cases, the lanes have gotten narrower. We've tried not to minimize any lanes less than 10 feet, which is kind of the DOT minimum standard of operation there. And in fact, those are the areas where we've downgraded the bike lanes where we've had to, is to narrow those up to ensure we can keep that minimum travel lane. But within those, simply to say, stay between the lines and you're operating, where you should be in a motor vehicle. You will see that when you get to some of the intersections, such that solid line will turn into a skip. There'll be dashes. That's an area where you can cross over. And that's just to allow you to pull over to the right to make that turn. That's an area of potential conflict. The dash lines also indicate to bicyclists that they should also be aware that traffic may be wanting to merge into there to complete a turn. So that's, again, that differential there from solid line to skips are to just indicate to everybody that here's a conflict, a potential transition, and everybody should be paying attention for the other as they operate through those areas. You'd also see those, I think Stanley Street's probably one maybe people are more familiar with. We'd also have those at transit stops, because we understand that the bus is going to pull to the curb. We want bicyclists to understand that they need to be aware that a vehicle may enter into the bike lane at that point in time. So that may be too much information, I don't know, but that's kind of the rundown of everything we're putting in there without going, I can go sheet by sheet on our design if you want to go into that level of detail.
No, as much
Hopefully
as I'd
that
love to
will-
do that, Scott.
So hopefully that gives you an idea of what it is and kind of a little bit of history. And so if anyone has any questions about it, I'd be glad to answer that. But I'll leave it at that.
Before,
Well,
Scott, thank you.
I do have one question for you and one question for the chief. For you, young man, a number of my neighbors are concerned that since the bike lane is in, now does that mean this winter when they're plowing, they're going to plow right to the curb? In which case that means everything from the street will end up on our sidewalk and front yard. I have had a number of neighbors corner me on that. And then for the chief, I've had the question of, well, with bike lanes, does that mean we're going to start enforcing bicyclists being ticketed for going through stop signs, turning without hand signals, etc.? So it's two more questions if you guys could answer.
I can certainly answer that question. And I would say there's, what we use as policy and kind of how every winter transpires can be a little bit different. So preface with that, but it is our policy actually to plow curb to curb. So we do our best to do that already. So the bike lane should not change what we're otherwise, doing in reality. However, in practice, I'm sure as sidewalks and stuff are shoveled, the terrace space where it does exist is going to get filled. We already started last year to try to revamp our snow picking routes to try to, based upon what we anticipated was going to go in for this project, such that, we would try to make more regular visits to areas that may be problematic to us, that we envision, to pick the snow periodically, such that that snow does not, hopefully doesn't accumulate too much as to block the bike lane, or as well as to become a problematic for residents, where they don't know and have no place to go with the snow in that case. So we'll have to see exactly how that goes. Every winter is different, but we will go all the way to the curb, but we will also try to be cognizant of the buildup of snow and deal with that as well.
All right, Scott, thank you. Chief Zenner, you had a question, or excuse me, a question from Commissioner Ostrowski was directed toward you. After you answer that, I'm going to see if there's any other questions from commissioners. I basically wanted to provide an opportunity, as Commissioner Ostrowski had asked me, to explore basically some of the rules of the road. And given the length of our agenda today, we're not really here to go beyond that. So there was part of an enforcement question for police there, if you would, sir. Chief
Yes,
Zenner.
First, I want to extend a thank you to Scott for helping out today. I got a hold of him earlier this morning, and short notice, he was able to pop in because he can explain this a whole heck of a lot better than me on what a bike lane is and a Shero is. And I've learned a whole lot of new names for roadways involving bikes. But as for enforcement, I guess just put it in perspective, this isn't the first time bikes have operated on the roadway. We've been dealing with bicyclists on the roadway and enforcing bike violations for many years. Of anything, there may be a couple more things we'll be looking at, in particular Franklin Street. Is that a contraflow, if I got it right, Scott? Terminology, right? I believe it's a contraflow. So obviously this is something that's a bit new that we would be focusing on in law enforcement. But again, we've enforced bike laws, rules of the road in the past, and we'll continue.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Carlson.
I was just curious. First of all, Scott, I think it sounded a whole lot more confusing than it actually is. Once you see the pavement markings, it's sort of there and you understand it. But great job trying to, put that all out to us, because it was a lot of info. But my biggest question: how many parking spaces do you anticipate? Just ballpark figure here. I'm not looking for an exact number. How many parking spaces are we going to lose on-street parking to this, especially around the university area and Pacelli? I heard you mention that. That's a concern I have.
Yeah, I don't have a really good number of that. We're putting together some of that information because part of it is going to be within the metered area we currently have by the university. But I would say citywide, it is going to be several hundred. For sure. Much of Maria Drive, which has been available for parking, will no longer have parking. The north end of Michigan, which had allowed parking, will no longer have parking. 2nd Street North, there even by Spash, which isn't heavily utilized and is time limited parking, will also be removed. That will become no parking. But it seems, I think the area is probably most heavily hit to that. And it's actually an area where we, otherwise we'll go back and make some changes. It's over by Schmeekley Reserve on Maria Drive, as well as probably there along Michigan, which was heavily utilized before. And then that area, Maria, over by the Catholic school there, part of the reason why we reached out to those hopefully earlier to let them know what was happening. We see those as probably being the most impacted by this. There will be some other loss of parking on Water Street. But again, in areas typically we don't see a lot of parking. In the areas where we've seen more parking, that's where we've utilized either the Shero or the urban shoulder. So we don't, we're trying not to eliminate all of it, but yes, some of it will disappear.
Yeah, especially around the university. That's always been
well, and there's an inconsistency by the university too. The boys' ball diamond, there is some parking left. The girls' ball diamond, there is none. You may get some feedback from a lot of angry parents for the girls' softball team. I can tell you that.
And that's definitely something we're going to have to, to look at, and how much it was trying to balance out parking as we understood it, understanding more so on some of the numbers, more so versus the convenience of which it was used. I think ever since the pay for parking had gone in there, even during ball games, some of it has even come around where as far as the scheduling of which those games have changed some to limit it there. They've started actually, of course this past spring they didn't do much of that, but more weekend games or evening, games, they always play double headers typically, which has reduced the amount of demand, for that. We of course don't know if that's going to be consistent going forward. And if there is otherwise a need, and we have space, the one nice thing about it is just paint on the ground, and it can be changed in the future. So there definitely are going to be some, some learning as we go through it and some growing pains to what we have there. Definitely open to anybody's suggestion on it if they have a conflict there and need to. So I know I've already talked to Chief Bobble at the university and other staff there, and Jim Buchholz at Schmeekley Reserve, and trying to work through some things with them already.
All right, trying to put a cap on this. Thank you, Commissioner Carlson, Commissioner Ostrowski. We do have a lengthy agenda. Scott, a special thanks to you for some time. I understand the city attorney has joined us and may have a comment. If that's correct, go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. I do have one brief comment with regards to Commissioner Ostrowski's a comment from a constituent about enforcement of traffic laws for bicyclists. It's not the first time in my tenure that I've heard comments about a desire for strict enforcement of the traffic code for people on bikes. And I guess my response back to that would be, would those people also like to see strict enforcement of speed limitations for cars? Technically, 26 and a 25 is a speeding ticket. I can tell you emphatically as the prosecutor for traffic violations that we do not prosecute it that close to the bone. I think the lowest I've seen for a speeding violation is 34 or 35. So I guess careful what you wish for, perhaps.
Are you sure you wish to publicly announce that, Counselor?
I think everybody generally understands sort of the level at which they're pushing the limits, so to speak.
All right. Thank you for those thoughts. Again, thank you to Commissioner Ostrowski for asking for this agenda item, Commissioner Carlson for your question. Scott, again, a special thanks. You didn't get a lot of notice. You provided a very comprehensive update. I think it's very safe to say, after listening to your report, this is very much, as tends to be normal for government work, it's very much a work in progress. You're not done. You've got some work to do. You've got ordinances, signage, and you can make adjustments as necessary. But it's also, as former alderperson Moore knows, not the first time the city has worked on pedestrian and bicycle issues. When you were an alderperson, Commissioner Moore, you remember those years where we worked on those prior to 2014. So it's part of our community. And the other thing, again, I just want to say thank you. And we look forward to a successful implementation. I would encourage you, Scott, I think I heard you say it, but I want to encourage you to please work closely with the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. As I think all of us recognize, they are a key partner in this community. And from what I'm hearing, they're going to be impacted significantly by removal of parking on Michigan, Maria Drive, as we've heard from a couple of commissioners. So I believe I heard you already doing that. But having spent years at the university, I know how much they appreciate being looped in at the beginning and being a part of the collaborative process. So Scott, thank you. And we'll look forward to you doing that. All right, thank you, Scott. We're going to move forward with the permission of my colleagues here. Item number 5 is a request for out-of-state travel to Indiana for the K-9 officer. Chief Zenner, you want to give us a quick rundown on this, please?
Yes, actually, I got Assistant Chief Bob Cousseau that works very closely, actually oversees the K-9 program, and I was going to have him give a presentation on that.
Go ahead, Bob.
All righty. Well, first of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to all of you about this. I'm actually pretty excited about this opportunity. You all know Sergeant Blue. He is our K-9 handler along with his K-9 Barry. And he has been in communications with Von Lick Kennels down in Indiana, where we purchased our K-9s from. And they are putting on a trainer course. And I'm kind of calling it a train the trainer. It's a 9-week trainer's dual purpose police dog course. The course combines all phases of detector and patrol dog training. This affords, if we would approve to send Sergeant Blue to this, an opportunity to completely train several green dogs, brand new dogs, and their handlers through all the phases of the police service dog training. Upon successful completion of this course, would give Sergeant Blue qualifications to recertify our own canines along with any agencies in or near our jurisdiction. Every year, our canines have to be recertified at a cost of $800. So the course is expensive. It is $11,410. That covers the training, the housing, and includes the American Working Dog certification. Again, Von Lick charges $800 per dog to recertify annually. That would save us, as the Stevens Point Police Department in the city, $1,600 a year by itself for Fala and Barry getting them recertified. When Sergeant Blue brought this to my attention, he actually reached out to several agencies that work with them on a consistent basis and do monthly training, and got a hold of 7 agencies and asked them about an opportunity to come here to the city of Stevens Point to certify their dogs if he would be sent to this training for a lesser fee. So we would actually charge $500 per dog and save all the agencies around here $300. The response was incredible. We got 7 agencies that have a total of 13 dogs that said that they would definitely come here to the city of Stevens Point for recertification annually. That's a total cost of $6,500 that we brought into our canine program annually. And Sergeant Blue also checked with several businesses in the area in the city of Stevens Point and Portage County, and has already gotten permission from them to use certain buildings throughout the county and the city for this type of training. And the 7 agencies, I'm just going to point out the Wausau PD, which has 4 dogs, Portage County, which has 2, the Marshfield Police Department, which has 2, Adams County, which has 2, the Loyal PD has 1 dog, Everest Metro PD has 1 dog, and Spencer PD has 1 dog. We did understand, or do understand, that this is a very costly training. So Sergeant Blue reached out to a private donor who wants to remain completely anonymous here in Portage County, and he has agreed to put $10,000 towards this training if it is approved for out-of-state travel by the Police and Fire Commission. That would leave the city of Stevens Point or the Stevens Point Police Department at the additional $1,410 for the cost of the training. And I will say, almost all of the training for 2020 has been canceled due to COVID. We have a very healthy budget that would easily cover that $1,410. And if we would send Sergeant Blue to this training with Barry, that would actually count as well for his recertification, which would save us an additional $800. So we'd be in charge of his wages and his meals. That would come to an additional $800, which is kind of made up by not having to recertify Barry for the additional $800 because it's already included in the $11,410. We would assign him to the administrative schedule, so he would work Monday through Friday, and it'd be 8-hour shifts, and that's what that training is. We also looked at patrol to make sure that wouldn't cause manpower issues on patrol, calling people in. Because in September and October, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we always have a minimum of 7 people on night shift. But it actually worked out for us on that aspect as well, because he actually doesn't work any of those weekends right after the training would start. So it would not cause any overtime on patrol for calling manpower in to work the road while he was actually gone for this 9-week course. With the certification, he would have to recertify annually, and that would consist of going back to Von Lick. But with the instructor certification, he is eligible to go down in August to a canine special canine Olympics is what it's called, and it's free of charge, so we'd have to pay for his meals and time. But if he participated in the canine Olympics as an instructor or a judge, that would recertify him annually for this position, and it would certify Barry as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Again, it would cost the city $1,410 from our training budget, which we would be able to cover. And so we're actually looking to get your approval as the Police and Fire Commission for the out-of-state travel. And if you guys have any questions, I do have Sergeant Blue here that can answer them.
Bob, I just want to say, initially when you started this, I thought, oh my God, and I wanted to faint, but you answered every question or every concern I had. And I really like that you guys are thinking outside the box here and making it work in a creative sort of way. And it's nice to have the community involvement in it too. So I really like the way you said it. And like I said, initially I thought, oh my God, 9 weeks, $11,000, but you ironed that out perfectly. I liked what I heard.
Well, I
Thank you, Commissioner Carlson. The only question I have for Chief Zenner for Assistant Chief Cousteau, with one of our K-9 units out of the city that long, does that present any unique challenges for patrol in the community? Bob, you want to take it, or Tom? I don't care.
Bob, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, we have great partnerships with our area communities. Portage County has 2 dogs. We obviously still have 1 dog. And some of those agencies that would be here to do recertification are obviously partners that we have in the K-9 program. We'd have no issues with Barry being out of the jurisdiction.
We're really we're really kind of excited about this if it is approved. Because as of right now, in the first couple of years, we would do local jurisdictions, but our goal would eventually to bring in the entire state, because right now everybody has to go down to Indiana to recertify or bring one of their instructors up for a higher cost. So we're hoping that a couple of years from now, if it's approved, that we can bring in a lot more agencies, obviously bringing some more money to the city as well. Hotels and restaurants and so forth.
All right, I'm going to move that the Police and Fire Commission authorizes this expenditure for the request for out-of-state travel for the K-9 team to train the trainer. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Carlson. All commissioners in favor of the motion? Are there any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Assistant Chief Cousteau. Well done on the presentation. Item number 6, update on the training officer for the fire department. Chief Finn, you have the floor, sir.
We did interviews. We advertised it internally. We had 1 applicant. We had an interview panel, then an interview with myself. The internal candidate knocked it out of the park. We offered him the job, and September the 8th, a week from today, firefighter paramedic Trevor Howard will be promoted to Division Chief of Training. And then at 4:30 that day, due to COVID, we'll have a small promotional ceremony where someone from his family can pin his new badge on him and stuff like that. We're pretty excited. He knows, and Chief Moody can attest to this or say whatever, anything else, but he's got an uphill battle here, and he knows what we want to do, and he's ready for the challenge. Chief, you got anything to say? So.
Well, again, congratulations to your management team, Chief Finn, and we certainly also, as the Police and Fire Commission, are grateful for the support of the Common Council on this, as it's been reported at a number of other commission meetings. This is the first time in many years that we have formally moved to a training officer in the fire service, and between fire and paramedics and law enforcement. I can't think of any other career fields that require more continuous training, continuous education. So appreciate all of that. I don't think any action is required. The chief has the authority under state law to make the promotion. Are there any questions for Chief Finn before I move on? All right, thank you, Chief Finn, and we'll look forward to periodic updates from our new training officer, Trevor Howard. Item number 7, update on the capital budgets. Last month, both Chief Zenner and Chief Finn presented their 2021 capital budgets to the Police and Fire Commission. They were reviewed, a comprehensive review forwarded to the Finance Committee. Who has an update for us? Chief Finn, you want to go first?
We met with the mayor and Corey. It's in their hands before it goes to the city council. Comptroller Laddick might be able to give you a better update on the dates and stuff, but I believe the department heads will get to know the information and what they're recommending to the city council before it goes to council. I believe it goes to council the 14th, which would be the second Monday for committees for approval. Comptroller Laddick, if you can expand on that, you could probably explain a little better than me.
Yeah, so the chief is right. Basically, September 14th is the date that it would get presented to the Finance Committee. And then it would come forward for final approval in October. So October Finance and October Common Council would be the final approval. And then right now, the mayor and I are still working out a recommendation. So, but we do hope to have that together, rather soon, so that we do have a chance to get it to the various department heads, so that they're aware of what's being proposed.
Corey, I'm going to ask that if you and the mayor have any significant changes that you're going to recommend for police or fire, I know you'll communicate that with Chief Zenner and Chief Finn. Would you communicate that with the commission too, kindly?
Sure. Yep.
But I, of course, remain always optimistic there will be no modifications.
Well, we do the best we can with the money we have. So.
Okay. Tom, did you want to add anything to that, or did we kind of cover it there?
No, that was everything. Corey, the mayor was with me and he just left, and he said the same thing. Maybe late this week or early next week, we'd be getting some feedback.
We'll look forward to an update. And since we have the comptroller stay with us, I was going to share, I was going to ask the chiefs where we are on the preparation, which is just beginning, the 2021 operational budget planning. And in communication I had earlier this week with the comptroller, he outlined some areas for my consideration. But Corey, if you're still with us, why don't you just share basically with the entire commission and those chiefs what you told me about operating budgets and how they look next year, sir.
Sure. So for next year, unfortunately, we aren't able to do the across the board adjustments for some of the discretionary line items, and probably won't be able to add new positions either, just based on the available dollars. However, we do want to still maintain, current services and current operations. So we do still intend to do, for those employees that aren't under a union contract, we still intend to do a cost of living adjustment. And obviously for those that are under a union contract, that's all based on their contracts as far as the annual adjustment. Overall, the 2021 budget is a little bit more difficult than in recent years, just because our net new construction number went down, and our ability to increase property taxes for operations is based on the amount of net new construction that we have as a community. Last year, that number was fantastic. We had a 3.99% number to work with, which is why, we were able to see some progress made in terms of staffing and some other priorities for the city. Going into the next budget, the number that we have to work with is 1.2%. So that's significantly down from where it was before. And basically that number does ebb and flow a little bit, where you have good years and you have bad years, and you try to, in the good years, you try to do as much as you can with what you have, and in the bad years, you try to sort of maintain the status quo as much as you can. So I'm not expecting that we're going to have any major pain or cuts or eliminate positions or anything, but there just isn't going to be a lot of money available for anything new.
You really, you've been talking a net zero impact at this point, correct, sir?
So for the discretionary line items,
Right.
We have given the operating budgets to the department heads, and the discretionary type line items like training, office supplies, those types of things, we're looking at a net zero increase. So in previous years, when we've been able to, we've tried to work in some inflationary adjustment to those line items. We're not going to be able to do that this year. So the direction to the departments is, if they need to increase one discretionary line item to try to decrease it somewhere else. And then, of course, you do have some of those natural increases for wages and benefits, and those, we're not asking the departments to offset those. We typically don't. That's sort of its own process.
All right, are there questions for the comptroller or our chiefs from the commission? All right, and of course, as Corey mentioned, let's not forget, I know the commissioners are aware of this, that he went through the new construction number and the importance of a good construction or an off year, but the city's levy limit is based on that number, so.
Finn, did you have something to say?
I was just going to say that after talking with Chief Zenner, both our management teams are working. This operational budget is due to Corey's desk on September the 11th.
All right. Chief Zenner, anything? No?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Any questions for either one of our chiefs or any questions for the comptroller who, thank you, Corey, for taking time to join us here today. Any other questions? Okay. We don't really need motions on that. Let's move kindly to the fire chief's report, including EMS report. Chief Finn, you have the floor.
There is no EMS report due to today being the first. It's really hard to get out a report with numbers and stuff, plus Chief Kems is on vacation. I believe you guys were sent the fire chief's report. What's not in the report is on August 29th, Alex Knight, who was here just over a year, resigned to go to a department back where he's from, down in the Madison area. Did an exit interview. Nothing we could have done. He wanted to go home. He likes bigger city living and stuff like that. So we finally got up to the strength that we're supposed to be at. Now we're one down again. John Clements actually started today. We have two more that we're waiting to just get hiring dates. We're waiting for Dr. Anderson, our psychiatrist, give his reports, but he had gallbladder surgery, so that's been delayed a little bit. But hopefully in the next month, we'll have two more on board. It was posted on NeoGov today. Chief Moody working with Lisa Yakush. We're going to run our own test again in mid-October. What I had also was Target Solutions is a training software, and Lexipol, which is a policy and procedure software. We now have them both up and running in the fire department. Lexipol was given our whole book of policies and procedures, and this is going to be a long process, but the police department currently uses it, and after talking with Chief Zenner, he highly recommended that we do the same thing, that they update our policies and procedures and make sure they're legal. We have our first 10 back. There's a working group, including the two assistant chiefs, that review it before it comes to my desk for final approval. I don't know how many people read the paper over the past weekend, but there was many different types of protests that were going to be planned for this weekend in the city of Stevens Point. Working very closely with the Stevens Point Police Department, we had a plan in place. They had a plan in place. Obviously, we can't tell you what the plan is, but a lot of hours went into developing this plan. I want to commend the police department, who worked, and I saw firsthand, worked very closely with the organizers of both sides to keep everything very peaceful in the city. We are planning for more in this day and age. We expect more, but so you guys know that it's a very good communication, good and close communication between us and the police department. And since you're talking about the operational budget, looking at my operational budget, I'm already over in overtime. So, and we are keeping a spreadsheet for COVID-related overtime and the planning and the plans that we have in place for any of the peaceful protests that are organized in the city. They were trying to, so by the end of the year, we will know what caused what overtime, so everyone knows. But again, I can't say enough about Stevens Point Police Department. I watched it firsthand. They say we were part of it. No, we just kind of rode their coattails and supported them. But it was nice to watch behind the scenes. You guys should be proud of your police department.
Chief Finn, I think I can speak for the commission and the community. We're not only proud of the police department, we're proud of the fire service and the work the paramedics do and all of our services to provide the citizens the city of Stevens Point. Are there questions from the commission?
Yes. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And Chief Finn brought it up and it sort of spurred my thought process here. But with the overtime crunch, you're already overtime. And you said there'll be more protests. Many cities, when political people come there during election years, will charge that party or that person coming in the overtime costs associated with it. Now I see some cities are charging overtime costs for the protests. Any thought that Stevens Point can charge if you're going to have a protest here, that we can charge the overtime back to the organizers of that event?
I would believe that would be up to the city council.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw it out there, Bob.
No, I get it, but that would be a city council decision. And that's all I'm going to say in the matter right now.
Okay, all right.
Further question? Go ahead, Commissioner Ostrowski.
I'd just like to compliment the chief because he said something very important to me when he said he's keeping track of the overtime of what's causing it. Because we all know times are going to change next year or the year after, and it's going to be good to know where this expense came from. I want to compliment you. That was a brilliant idea, and I thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. Brilliant and my name don't come together a lot, so thanks.
Well, I don't know. Both start with the letter B, you know that.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Brilliant? All right. I'll move approval of the fire chief's report for the month. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ostrowski. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Thank you, Chief Finn. Really well done. Item 10, the approval of Officer Chai Yang to replace to regular police officer status. Chief Zenner.
This Officer Yang is completing surprisingly 18 months. He'll be rounding out September 25th, I believe, will be officially the end of 18 months. He's done an excellent job at the department, and all should have a recommendation from his lieutenant, and that'd be Lieutenant Joe Johnson, who recommends he move to permanent status.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioners have the letter addressed to Assistant Chief Cousseau from Lieutenant Joseph Johnson. The letter is self-explanatory, and I am supportive of appointing Officer Yang as permanent status in the city of Stevens Point. Is there any question, discussion?
I'll second that.
All right, we'll take that as a motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 11, discussion with possible action to authorize a new hire for the police department. Again, Chief Zenner, you have the floor, sir.
Unfortunately, we did have one officer that didn't make it through his field training process, which did open up a position at the department. And as we have done previously with Officer Gartman and DeRoser, we submitted a letter one-time exemption for the conditional employment of law enforcement officer. That form has been filled out and is within the packet. The officer or the individual that we'd be bringing forward for that position is Cody Stankowski. Cody has been operating as a part-time officer in Croninwood Police Department and Grand Rapids Police Department. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from UW Eau Claire, and he has already obviously attended the certification program. He has a family, mother and father, and I believe an uncle that's in law enforcement. So he's well versed in what it takes, obviously with being a part-time officer too, what it takes to enter the law enforcement field. We ask for the PFC to grant us to move him forward in that program.
Chief, where is he in the hiring protocols?
He is at this point, we have gone through the interview process, the ride-alongs. He is basically ready to move forward in the position, other than the fact that he is engaged to be married September 19th. So that jams up a little scheduling in the training process, but he is ready to move forward.
All right, are there any questions for our Chief of Police on the candidate that has been submitted to us for review and action?
When you say move forward, Chief, and all that other stuff?
You froze up there. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. I'm really cold. No. Just when you say he's ready to move forward, does that mean on to the next step, psych eval, physical?
That has been completed.
Oh, it did. Okay, good. All right.
So really, there are no additional hiring protocols required.
No, other than you as a commission to say you are good to go.
Commissioner Carlson, I'll accept the motion.
I'll make a motion to accept him.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Moore. Thank you. Is there further discussion? All in favor of extending the employment offer to Cody, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, Chief, let's just keep rolling here. We'll move to your report dated August 27th. Item 13, the police chief's report. Chief Zenner, you have the floor.
Probably one of the biggest things I would point out, and Chief Finn has already talked about it, the incident that we just had this weekend. Significant resources went into the planning on that. I will, and an after action report did go out identifying what action took place. Assistant Chief Cousseau was incident command. Chief Finn was in the incident command with him, as well as our PIO, Dana Williams. They did an outstanding job, actually throughout the whole week leading up to this incident, developing communications with 4 different entities that I would say was in one way or another involved in activity this weekend. Unfortunately, the events were canceled due to some comments that were made online that speaking with each organizer of the 4 entities, none of those individuals were involved in. It sounded like it was some outside influences. All 4 entities had one common agreement, and that was the right of all for a peaceful protest. So as we move forward, we'll continue to engage with the organizations and organizers and develop good communication. That did assist us over the weekend. Other than that, we did have another incident, a SWAT call out. I believe that was on August 21st. That incident ended up being about a 5-hour standoff. We had a negotiator, Kent Lepak, that just did an outstanding job with patience and professionalism that he displayed in that standoff. Ended peacefully, and we were able to arrest the individual and transport him back to Clark County, where he had been involved in a significant assault that involved strangulation and a threat with a deadly weapon firearm. Also talking about the overtime, and I want to reiterate also what Chief Finn had talked about, working with Leanne. We have identified overtime from in this weekend and actually past protest, where we have used that as a category. And I've talked earlier today with Corey Laddick about and whether this actually comes to fruition or not. But I know we're under a state of emergency. Whether this in particular overtime associated with this weekend would fall into possible recoup of monies expended on overtime. I'm not sure, but we are exploring that, as well as COVID overtime that has been identified, and as identified before with the COVID updates. Lieutenant Mueller is keeping track of that. We are, what I thought at the beginning of the year was going to be a savings on overtime, that has done a Houdini and went right out the door. We are well on path to exceed our overtime. Other than that, mental health calls, 51 welfare checks, that is an increase. We have been seeing, and consistently that number has been rising in the last few months. We can draw, parallels obviously to events that are taking place, COVID and other events that may have something to do with that. That'd be speculation, but I think it would be pretty close. I have any other questions on the chief's report?
Chief Zenner and one sec, folks. Yeah, we'll come up for a sec. Chief Zenner and Chief Finn, I know you have frequently updated the commission on overtime, the overtime meter running. I think if we could prepare for October, at least a snapshot as to what that number looks like in the fire, EMS, and police. Basically a year to date, it'll give us a 9-month actual. We'll recognize that number may increase more for October, November, and December. But while I'm thinking about it, if you could prepare for the October meeting, basically where we are, this is the actual overtime number, and then we can of course share that with the mayor and comptroller. So whoever had a question, please go ahead.
Chief, I'd like to ask you on the mental health study. Is there a certain age group that it seems to be striking, or is it all across the board?
I have not seen a spike at any particular age on it. It's pretty much across the board. Officer Radzik, he works with our crisis intervention, and he's been very busy. I've had some communications with Health and Human Services, essentially voicing some frustrations I have on that end, and we'll see whether that becomes a topic for a future Police and Fire Commission meeting. But I think we identify ourselves and our partners within the mental health spectrum, and I'll say this, I think our partners need to step up. And I've had conversations with Alder Kneebone, who is with us today, some definite frustrations that I've seen. But moving forward, we need to develop that partnership and operate better than we are today.
Thank you, Tom.
Given the sensitivity of these issues, I want us to be careful, but is there any way you can elaborate on what you just reported to the commission, Chief Zenner?
Well, with the mental health, there's obviously many things that come into play. What leads us to that path of bringing an individual into crisis, whether it's other medical issues, alcohol, drug dependency, that being a big one. And in the end, we will say it all comes out in the end of it's a mental health issue, whether we have alcohol and drugs that lead to that or not. And I think we need to address the issues appropriately, not start drawing characterizations and dividing what may lead to that crisis. And I guess to be more, I want to be as fair as I can to all parties involved. And yes, I am frustrated with what's gone to this point. And Mary has been a much help in this situation. But I think law enforcement has adapted to an ever-growing mental health issue. We have a full-time employee that certainly would love to have on patrol, but we dedicate full-time to mental health. We have sent our officers mandatory training for crisis intervention training back to when Commissioner Carlson was on the road. We have adapted and I feel met the requirements needed moving forward. And I think other entities within the spectrum of our partners need to adapt to this changing environment too.
All right, I think we may have a future agenda item here to spend a little bit more time in depth and maybe create some type of strategy moving forward for implementation, say sometime in the first quarter of 2021, or for at least first half of the year. I'm not going to put Alderperson Nebo on the spot here because she wasn't expecting to talk about it. So thank you. Unless, Mary, did you have anything you wanted to say? I mean, if I don't want to put you on the spot.
Sure. Without naming names, I have a constituent in District 7. Unfortunately, one of the neighbors has a long history of mental health issues, exacerbated by alcohol and drug abuse, to the point where neighbors are trying to sell their houses because they're now in fear. The individual gets intoxicated, runs through the neighborhood, screams obscenities, peers in their windows, damages their property, and they're in fear for their lives. And every time they have called the police have responded. It's the mental health professionals that are letting people down. The individual doesn't need to be incarcerated. The individual needs help. And the police have better things to do with their time than, unfortunately, keep dragging this individual into jail for 24, 48 hours. It doesn't help. So here we are.
And I bet what Chief Zenner is talking about is not only that individual in Mary's area of District 7, but just reading the police reports in the Point Plover Metro, I see a lot of same age people that are in there every day, and I'm only assuming it's the same person. So we've got Groundhog's Day going every day, I think, with a lot of these people, and something's got to get fixed. And Tom, I appreciate you standing up and saying something too, because it's almost coming crisis time, I think, here for the community and the police department. So thanks for saying something, Mary. Thanks for saying something.
Would concur. Let's brainstorm and figure out what we can do as far as future agendas to address this, as the chief mentioned and Commissioner Carlson alluded to. Between investing in the training, education for full-time mental health officer for the city, which is rather unique for a police force our size, as I know all of you know, to additional significant mental health training for officers who are on patrol. I'm sure there are additional steps that can be taken. Let's brainstorm that. Leanne, if you would make a note, that might be a future agenda item in the very near future. And please kindly make a note, Leanne, about the overtime report, as I'm sure you already have, because you're very efficient. At least that snapshot in October. Are there other questions for our police chief on his report as it is submitted to us? If not, I'll move approval of Chief Zenner's report. Thank him for it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Again, thank you. Item 14, an update on the police chief search and screen. Commissioner Carlson, you are chairing that group, leading that effort. What do you have for us, sir?
I don't know that I'm sharing a lot, but back at, early August, we sent out, had Leanne send out to various people within city government what we've used in the past. And I don't know if we got back a compilation of everybody's input or just Lisa Yakush's, but I think everybody got a copy of Lisa's, which I thought was really, really pretty good, and the meat and potatoes of what we're looking for. The only thing I was thinking as I made notes this morning, and it almost sounded like a realtor, but I have like one or two short paragraphs to begin it, to make it sound inviting to come here. I just tweaked it a little in my own mind, and I don't know how I share that. Do I send it out to you guys in an email, or do you even want to see it, or is everybody happy with Lisa's write-up that she had? I was. I just wanted to, make it like a intro, about the city a little bit more.
Well, let me jump in. As Commissioner Carlson knows, I have provided some additional language to Ron. You've seen it, right?
No,
Yeah, I was sending an email to you
I did not get that. Okay.
for the police chief. Okay. I asked you if you had read it. Okay. I will recirculate that in the some of the language that I have added. In the paragraph that starts, the police chief must possess strong ability to utilize. I've added some language that I will circulate to commissioners. I would like to add that. And I would like you all to take one more look. Ron, if you would circulate your editorial changes among the commission, and Chief Zenner, Chief Finn, and Leanne for feedback. Let's work to wrap this up maybe within the next couple of days so you can proceed. But were there questions from Commissioner Ostrowski or Commissioner Moore or Commissioner Kirschling on the police chief material that was sent to you?
One thing I was wondering about is I saw the salary change. Does even that improved salary, is that really in realistic line? Because I know we've battled this in the past with getting qualified candidates. Is that a range that somebody handed us, or is that what typically chiefs are getting when they start out in this area?
I don't, is the comptroller still with us? As the commissioner knows, this is part of the city's management pay plan. And I think it's even reflected in some of the narrative that step 20 in the start step for the city council's adoption of the pay plan. I think Lisa writes that she's even unsure what might happen during the budget process for 21. Bob, your question is a little more general than that. Is 95,742 competitive? The answer is I don't know, Bob.
Okay. I was just curious to see if that was similar to other departments in our area.
I want to believe that when the management pay plan was constructed, now for full transparency here, I was not involved in the creation of this management pay plan. But Alderperson Moore and I have participated in a number of pay plans over our years of service with the city. As a rule of thumb, when you hire a consultant, as the city did, to construct a pay plan and create salary ranges, they are to be looking at market comparables. They're supposed to be looking at what are they paid in Rapids and Marshfield and Wausau and surrounding areas, and not necessarily comparing it to, well, what does the police chief in Milwaukee and Madison make in comparison to Stevens Point? Do I know they did that? No. Am I inclined to believe they did that because of my work on other pay plans? I'm inclined to believe that's how they did it. Corey, are you still with us?
He is not.
All right. Thank you, Chief Zenner. But it's a really good question. What I'll do, Commissioner Ostrowski, is I'll get you an answer to that. Chief Zenner, is there anything you could, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
I was just remembering back during the process before, I think we were below Marshfield, we were below Wausau, and even that 95, I think, was below what we were 3 years ago or 4 years ago when we were looking, but I could be wrong too. Things could have changed since then.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what brought it to my mind, Ron. I thought we were on the low side last time.
Yep.
Chief Zenner?
Yeah, I would add that that is the starting wage as far as I know. Even as I was put on the interim pay scale, that was bumped up. So I believe that's a starting wage, and they have the option to go up to, I believe, step 4.
Leanne, would you be kind enough, either sometime tomorrow or Thursday or sometime this week when it works for you, would you reach out to Lisa or the comptroller and just confirm some of the answers to the questions that Commissioner Ostrowski has asked about the salary and how that was determined. And I think you could just share that kindly in an email with commissioners and anyone else who might be interested. It's a really good question. I don't know. It's a fair question. What I would like to see is we're going to, commissioners, if you have additional feedback on that one sheeter called Police Chief, and I will email to you, Ron, some additional language that I added to that. And let's try and come to a consensus conclusion by Friday so we can start working and posting that. The other item that is circulating out there is the lengthy job description, position description the city calls them. Ron, have you had an opportunity to review that, or Chief Zenner? I think that's very much an internal working document, distinguishing features, essential duties. That needs some editing. That was last worked on in June of 2015. I have to believe in 5 years, there's an awful lot of updating that is required in that document. Have you had a chance to work on that, sir? Commissioner Carlson? Ron, I think you muted your mic.
I did. I hit the wrong button. But I'll get in touch with Tom and Leanne, and maybe we should go over that and tweak it where it needs to be tweaked.
Yeah, and I know that Ron circulated the police chief one sheeter among a number of people, but if we would again at least reach out to the city attorney and HR, I think those are two key offices that have to at least review. Certainly the city attorney, when you have a position description with so much in it, I really want a legal review on that for the benefit of the community.
Okay.
All right, so to put a cap on the update, let's have the commissioners finalize any input they have for Commissioner Carlson on that police chief one sheeter. And we can go to work on the position description behind the scenes. Are there any other questions? Chief Zenner? Any commissioners?
Nope, I do
All
not.
right, I think that will suffice. All right, hopefully very soon, special counsel to the Police and Fire Commission, Dean Dietrich, has he joined us, Tom?
Yes, he has.
All right, so with that, I'm going to move, commissioners, that we adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985-1 and G for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel who is rendering advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the commission with respect to litigation it is likely to become involved in, including discussion regarding responses to public record requests. Is there a second to my motion?
I will second it.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. Leanne, would you kindly call the roll, please?
Carlson,
You're really bad, Mike, but if you said Carlson, yes.
Chrissy,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Ostrowski,
Yes.
and Westcott.
Yes, all right, we are in closed session. Tom, if you would clear the field and
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.